A common problem with gymnastics is what's called the cross-pelvic syndrome.
Athletes have to be able to trust me. I'm not going to do anything that's not legal.
Larry Nassar had a reputation that no other doctor I knew had. Everybody trusted him.
And I remember being like, oh, you've touched greatness, and just being enamored with them.
No one really knew just how much power Larry had.
Nassar used the money, metals, and power to blind everyone.
These treatments where you're dealing with girls, do you ever get aroused during these exams?
I sent patients to this guy. I recommend this guy to other doctors.
Oh wow, he's not putting gloves on, but it's gotta be legit. He's the Olympic doctor.
He probably did feel invincible.
In my opinion, it became such an addiction for him. He used it as a weapon. The 2024 Olympics was the first competition I've seen and been able to kind of sit and watch in probably 12 years.
Simone Biles powered a dominant U.S. women's team in the finals in Paris, with Biles at her show-stopping best.
The sport has come such a long way since I was a competitor. I was able to watch and feel proud of my own past.
Hey guys, welcome to our vlog.
The girls were happy. They weren't afraid. They were in a better mental place. They were able to do super well.
It's a beautiful sport, and it had been defiled by bad people for decades.
Growing up, I did feel like I never really fit in anywhere. Once I found gymnastics, that's when I actually started to have friends.
I started probably around the age of 6, just taking like a acrobatics class through like a local dance studio. That's when I became addicted to the feeling of like flying and the strength and being able to do something that none of my friends could do.
I love dancing. My mom signed me up for dance classes when I was, I think, 2.5, 3 years old, and I never stopped.
So a lot of low back pain is associated to an inhibited or weak butt muscle. So that's one of the biggest things that I look for an imbalance in their trunk to try and work this problem out.
I met Larry when I was 8, and it was at a competition. I felt privileged to be seen by him because of his reputation and because he was so well known.
He was known as a world-renowned doctor, and I always felt really special to be able to go and see him because he was the U.S. Olympic doctor.
Oh my gosh, you're like the creme de la creme. And I get to be treated by that.
The entirety of who I was based on my success and failures as a gymnast. If I wasn't able to compete, I couldn't live my life. And he was helping me to achieve my goals.
So I first met Larry Nassar at Michigan State. I was a medical student in 1991, and Larry was well known through the school because he had already been doing athletic training work with gymnastics before he became a doctor. And so I was so impressed, I didn't realize he was only a year or two ahead of me. I thought he was faculty at first. And then I realized he's actually a medical student. Like, oh, okay, wow, okay, this guy really, he's got it going on. We were all amazed by how advanced he was in the field already. He was very smart, very intelligent, very eager to go far in sports medicine, very eager to do work in gymnastics. He was very passionate about it. Larry had a very strong reputation throughout gymnastics in general.
Larry Nassar, for the 1996 Olympics, assumed a very important role, National Medical Coordinator of USA Gymnastics. At a time, he was in his early 30s and still a student. the United States still hadn't won a women's gymnastics team championship. And that's what people were looking for in 1996 on that last day of the team gymnastics competition. Last gymnast for the United States was Carrie Strug from the vault, and there was pressure. You could see it, you could feel it. On her first vault, Carrie Strug fell and injured her ankle.
Someone in that much pain visibly on TV was pretty startling.
Larry scooped in and put his arm around her, and he was this sort of hero.
He kind of just almost fatherly protects her as she's like wrapping her arms around him and crying. And he's like that little savior hero guy that comes in and protects her.
Larry was tasked with like trying to tape her up and trying to help her at that moment. And with the encouragement of the coaches, wanted her to go back out there and do her second vault.
People justifiably thought that Carrie Strug had to do that second vault for the U.S. to win a gold medal.
And so she did the vault, was able to land on one foot, which was absolutely incredible. And score enough to help the team get the gold.
Carrie Strug capped the first ever U.S. women's team gymnastics gold by nailing a vault on one leg.
It's one of those moments that sticks in your mind forever.
Larry's reputation after the 1996 Olympics was pretty much a reputation that no other doctor I knew had, because not many doctors get to be on national TV like that.
Anybody associated with that kind of dramatic and important victory would come out of the Olympics with enhanced reputation.
Larry pretty much became the de facto authority in gymnastics in the country. He was like the person that you had to go see if something was wrong. So he got to know on a first name basis pretty much every top level gymnast that would ever come through the program for 20 years.
When I was 8, I had landed short on a vault and my back was giving me some pain. And it happened to be him on staff as the trainer that kind of checked me out. Injuries are part of the game, and so when I had the opportunity to do something to fix that, I was going to take whatever was necessary to do that. I did always actually look forward to him being at competitions, and when I knew he was going to be there, I was actually more comfortable and confident. You could tell him what skills you were doing or what tricks you were throwing, and he knew exactly what body movements were required and what hurt and the injury itself. Eventually, I was seeing him just about weekly to get treatment. My back was always a problem. Larry was very laid back, very casual, and I felt like he was much different than a lot of the other doctors. He didn't feel intimidating. He had a good guy persona right off the bat.
He was quirky and energetic, kind of a funny guy. He had lots of little eccentricities about how he phrases things.
Where you get some inhibition, tightness, and it spells trouble with a capital T right here, okay?
He was a warm, charismatic nerd. Nerdy as far as like, oh, this is how the body works and stuff like that, but also like easy to talk to.
He was always very kind to others. He was always very gentle. He was never a boisterous or forceful personality.
You have to protect athletes. You have to let them know that we care. You know, it's not just a pat on the back. Hug them and love them and listen to them and support them.
He had nicknames for me. He used to always call me Goofy. He would give me gifts. Whenever he went to the Olympics, he would bring back postcards and then have all the gymnasts sign them.
Everyone that knew him thought highly of him. He was somebody I idolized and admired.
Eventually, Larry Nassar became a professor at Michigan State University and the university team doctor for the women's gymnastics team.
But he's not just an expert with bruises and sprained ankles. He's also done groundbreaking research on the effects of gymnastics on kids with autism. Physically, with balance, with proprioception, with strength, those skills helps to transfer over into her socializing skills too, working with coaches, eye contact, hearing, and responding.
Larry Nassar was not shy at all about advertising the good things he was doing.
I definitely think that Larry had grander goals for gymnastics as far as the medical care for it. You don't become like the de facto person that runs the health and wellness of USA Gymnastics by being passive. You have to play the political games, you have to lobby the right people, you have to do a lot of work to get to that position.
The 1990s was the start of Larry Nassar's ascent, and it continued for decades. Nassar had patients locally and nationally, and traveling around to all these competitions grew his reputation exponentially.
In my mind, there was no one that had the expertise that man had.
He had all these different power sources all wrapped into one. He was a celebrity in the gymnastics world. He was an expert as a doctor. He had a legitimate title. And he also was giving the different gymnasts his friendship.
These young gymnasts would have seen Nassar as somebody who was in the proximity of the most powerful people in the sport, people who would influence their careers and could perhaps make their ambitions come true.
No one really knew just how much power Larry had. Everybody trusted him. He was Dr. Larry. What happened with Larry Nassar made me question every interaction with him since 1991 and shaken my trust in people in general.
A common problem with gymnastics is what's called the cross-pelvic syndrome, okay? What's happening there is their back muscles may be tight. Their hip flexors may be tight.
Larry made tons of videos showing techniques for gymnasts, for trainers, for doctors. He'd have a lot of these videos on his website. He would disseminate them to coaches and other programs all across the country. He was always very dedicated to helping other doctors. He was a very giving person in that respect.
So what do we do to try and help that athlete?
A lot of the techniques that Larry was demonstrating were all things that we've done before. How to adjust a neck, a low back, a shoulder. There were some videos, however, that were a little more revealing of the gymnast. He would do a lot of work near the pelvic floor. That made me feel a little uncomfortable. But never did I think that Larry was doing anything nefarious.
Athletes have to be able to trust me. I'm not going to do anything that's not legal.
Around the age of 10, 11, I had been having back pain for several years. So I was recommended to see Larry Nassar through my mom's best friend. And so it was right around the end of 96, beginning of 97, at his office at Michigan State University that I first saw him. There was definitely within the first meeting of him talking about how, oh yeah, I was the guy that came up onto the floor and scooped up Carrie Strug. And then you're just like, and I remember being like, head over heels, whatever you want, let's do it. The first appointment, I know, were the x-rays. He did a lot of like standing behind me, checking like how my pelvis moved, all legitimate things as a PT. And after he just said, hey, I'm just going to push on some pressure points kind of around your hip pelvis area. Still to this day, I distinctly remember thinking, oh wow, he's not putting gloves on. I feel like had he given a verbal like, hey, we're going to go inside your vagina, I would have spoken up. But at the time, I was like, he knows what he's doing. He's treated all these people, so it's got to be legit, right? he's the Olympic doctor. Like, you know, they've got to be able to pick from the cream of the crop, right? I remember the start of the treatment. I remember leaving my body, watching myself from the ceiling looking down, and the session ending, and then me not being able to look at my hands. I remember going home and just like laying and looking out the window and just like tears streaming down my face and being like, that's so humiliating. But thinking it's still my problem. It's still me. I'm the prude. I'm the problem. I didn't have the words to say what was bothering me. I didn't understand what was bothering me at that age.
I never told anyone until my friend asked, did he ever put his fingers inside you? And I said, all the time. And she said, that's not right. And then I told my best friend who wasn't a gymnast, and she told me it was abuse. I wouldn't believe that he was an abuser, and in fact, I did defend him as a good doctor and somebody that was helping me to achieve my goals. I grew up thinking that doctors were trustworthy, and in fact was told as a child that doctors could touch you in places that other people couldn't.
I'd known him all my life. He was a family friend and father figure for me. There were countless reasons why I thought I could trust him. Didn't really start seeing him every week until 3rd grade for appointments for my neck and back. I was an 8- and 9-year-old child. Sometimes he would skip treating my back and just go straight to my pelvic area. It'd make me feel really gross, and it was painful. I trusted him, so I always tried to make excuses, but I don't know, I think I knew deep down, like, it probably wasn't right.
The first time he actually touched me inappropriately, I was looking to my mom to see her reaction. And because she was calm and chatting with him as this was happening, I told myself it was fine.
He did all of his procedures right there with him. He would position himself between my parent and myself. They were there the whole time. There were times when, like, the internal treatments would just go on and on and on, and I would just be raw and in excruciating pain.
The gymnastics mentality is that if I wasn't in pain, I wasn't pushing myself hard enough.
It is a no pain, no gain situation where you don't complain to your coaches, because if you do, you're punished. And so you very much learn from a very early start that you don't say anything. I do feel like the win at all costs mentality made elite athletes in general ripe for abuse. Because, okay, I don't like this, but I've got to do it, right? I've got to not complain. I've got to just suck it up and deal with it. I think I was such an easy target for him because I came in with that mentality. He used it as a weapon. In my opinion, it became such an addiction for him, and the longer he got away with it, the more brazen he got.
The abuse got worse as I got older. He probably did feel invincible, like he could do whatever he wanted and he wouldn't get caught. I think that's probably why he felt like he had the power.
The abuse that I endured with Larry ultimately, I think, was one of the reasons I had to quit gymnastics when I was 16.
I saw him on and off from, say, 10, 11 to when He essentially told me if he couldn't fix me, it was time I give up gymnastics, which was my 8th grade year.
I had disconnected from the gymnastics world altogether for probably almost 20 years when the news came out.
I never dreamed in a million years that this would end up becoming a national event and tip off a massive movement worldwide.
I was part of a team at the Indianapolis Star who got an email from a woman named Rachel Den Hollander. At the same time, there was a lawsuit being prepared by an elite gymnast named Jamie Dancher. They alleged that Nassar, under the guise of medical care, had sexually abused them years earlier. And it was impossible not to wonder how many more could there be. And I said, we are onto something that is beyond effed up.
It was actually a week after I had just seen Larry. My mom watches the news every night, and this report popped up.
Nassar, he also began to massage internally, and nothing was off limits for him.
And my mom called me to come look at this. She was like, this is crazy. Look what's on the news right now about Larry.
It's very difficult to come forward against somebody who's as prominent as he is. Everybody who's a gymnast knows who Nassar is.
I was shocked. My mom asked me if it had happened to me, and I just kept brushing it off and saying, no, like he wouldn't do that to me, even though I knew that he had, and I was battling with it in my mind.
Initially, I was in shock. Could I really be a part of this? I had no idea the scale. My experience had been so many years ago, and so when I found out that there were other allegations, I had a lot of different emotions about it just because I didn't speak up, and a lot of guilt for not recognizing what had happened to me.
Larry called me on the phone and wasn't overly emotional at all. And he said, yeah, Steve, I'm just calling to tell you that you read an article about me, two people accusing me of sexual abuse. He felt like he was in control, almost like he had done this talk with several other people. He thought that Jamie Dancher was crazy. He was trying to dismiss her testimony and her accusations as being someone who was unstable and crazy. So my first inclination was to trust him and believe him. It was hard for anybody to fathom doing anything like this. He was recruiting people to defend him, and he was getting people to vouch for him. Everybody who was associated with Larry all these years, we were essentially groomed in a way to believe that there was nothing that he would ever do that could possibly be lascivious or perverted or abusive.
I think there was more disbelief of survivors rather than there was support. And I was very hyper aware of how everyone was treating the other survivors. My friend at dance at the time, her family were family friends of his, and obviously their family took his side too. It made it really hard for me to feel comfortable to want to speak my truth, so I fell into a really bad depression because I was having to bury what happened to me, and I couldn't talk about it to anyone.
Around this time, Rachel Den Hollander went to the Michigan State University Police.
There was a complaint brought against Larry that Larry had done some improper, abusive things to her in the clinic.
Michigan State University Police interviewed Larry Nassar.
I'm Andrew Munford.
Hi, nice to meet you, Larry Nassar.
During these treatments where you're dealing with young to old teenage girls, do you ever get aroused during these exams?
Do I get aroused during the exam?
Yeah, do you ever get an erection?
I'm not purposely trying to get arousal from doing any treatment. I mean, come on. I'm not purposely trying to gain some type of
wear a fanny pack. And at first I just thought that was like a quirky thing about him. But as I have gotten older and reflected, I definitely think he used to tuck his erection into the fanny pack. I didn't even know what an erection was at that point in time.
In September 2016, just a week or two after our story, Michigan State University fired Larry Nassar. A few weeks later, Nassar started facing criminal charges. I was very surprised that the university acted quickly, but as it turned out, they hadn't acted quickly at all. 2 years earlier, Michigan State University received a similar allegation and did not address it nearly the same way they did in 2016.
I've asked you to come in here voluntarily because this is under investigation. It sounds like there was a complaint made over at MSU Sports Medicine.
What I was told was that the patient was concerned that I was inappropriately touching her and didn't understand why. Those are two things that confuse me because I do this on a regular basis. This is a treatment that I lecture on. There's no question I was touching her in private areas. That's what I do.
While they were investigating allegations of inappropriate behavior, Larry Nassar was pulled off of duty for a brief period of time.
The 2014 investigation found that what Nassar was doing was appropriate, and he was allowed to return to practice under a few conditions. Things like doing exams in proper clinical settings, having a chaperone present for a minor, and using gloves.
But obviously, Michigan State, they let it go on. They didn't actually follow through.
Where his activities were called into question, he was able to manipulate Michigan State University. He was a master manipulator.
Nassar had dozens of patients. Lack of action caused an untold number of other girls to have been abused. As we and other journalists kept digging, it became apparent that Michigan State University wasn't the only large institution that failed these children. USA Gymnastics had a policy of almost literally filing away complaints if they didn't come from a gymnast's parent or guardian. Big, powerful, important organizations sometimes regard their own reputation and public standing as more important than protecting children. For years and years, they were being abused by this man who was hiding in plain sight. Somebody who has gotten away with what he had done for so long had to have thought that he could keep doing it and get away with it.
More than 60 women have filed complaints alleging abuse under the guise of invasive medical exams.
New lawsuits were filed yesterday. Michigan State University, USA Gymnastics, and even 7 individuals, including Nassar, are named as defendants in the new lawsuit.
People were finding out that we were the firm in the area representing survivors against Michigan State University. And as word got around, I would receive more and more calls. After we were at 12 or 20, I started thinking to myself, could this be real, that there are that many?
I contacted a lawyer, called them from the parking lot of a school, and kind of said, hey, this happened to me. I'm considering coming forward. I'm just really scared. The next day, my husband and I ended up meeting with a lawyer and deciding to go forward with the case.
Larry started working on his criminal case. He was going to work very hard to defend himself, and he had a whole plan in place. to try to overwhelm the accusers with research on his medical techniques and then testimonies from this cultivated army of supporters that he had. At the time, I was more on the side of Larry because he was my friend. I thought he probably may have done something that could have been misconstrued at the worst, but I never thought that he would do something sexual.
I first heard about the Nassar story after the case had been assigned to me. And my staff came to me and said, "Oh my gosh, do you know what case you have?" And said it's all over the news. We started receiving letters. For every 100 letters we got against Nassar, there were probably 10 letters from his friends saying he's a good guy, this is medical, what are you doing? Nassar used his medical degree to tell people the pelvic floor manipulation that he was doing on these young girls. It was medical, not sexual. And he went on to blame certain girls and basically say all of this is not true, they're lying.
There was a judge who asked, Middleman lost his mind. They thought that the university and Nassar, I guess, were above reproach.
Nassar constantly tried to take the power because somewhere in his head, he said, I'm going to appeal everybody. I'm still right. I'm going to win. Because that's the power and control that predators have in their head.
As law enforcement was investigating Nassar, they came across something that would change the case completely.
New charges against the former Olympics doctor already charged with sexually assaulting teen girls. The feds say Larry Nassar had child porn in his possession.
Nassar had on his computers 37,000 or more images of children, and he had put them out into the trash. He thought, once he threw them out, game over. But law enforcement found those pictures. The federal judge said that it was some of the worst child pornography she's ever seen. I don't want to go there in my own imagination. I can't. Nassar is arrested.
And that's when the tide of public sentiment went against Larry. When I heard the charges and I read all the details, I think I was physically nauseous because I was trying to comprehend how I supported him for even 1 minute. And it took me a little while to reconcile that. It was this horrible feeling like, oh my God, I sent patients to this guy. I recommend this guy to other doctors. And the shame of this, of course, is that it took this overwhelming pile of evidence for us to say, yeah, those women were not lying after all. You start thinking back in all your memories. Is there something that I missed? Is there something that I didn't see? Is there something that I could have done to stop this?
I was extremely disgusted and really disturbed, but it was relieving to know that there was hard proof that could incriminate him. People couldn't question anymore if the survivors were making it up.
There were civil lawsuits against Nassar. There were state crimes related to sexual abuse, but the federal charges of child pornography really started his world crumbling. Near the end of 2017, Nassar pleaded guilty to federal child pornography charges, but he was still facing state charges related to sexual assault. His lawyers, they were out there trying to say this guy is innocent. At this point, dozens and dozens of victims had come forward.
Larry Nassar has maintained his innocence in the state cases against him, saying the treatments he performed were accepted medical techniques. But that all changed today.
The lawyers came to me and said, would you accept a plea? And I said, what is it? And it was that he would plead to 7 charges. The rest of the charges would be dismissed.
Victim A, how do you plead?
Guilty of state of
It hit me like a sledgehammer. I wanted to run over there and just punch him as hard as I could in the face and say, why wasn't it good enough for you to just be the doctor that they trusted?
I said, well, I am going to allow everyone who wanted to testify to speak. It's their time, their right, and their voice that needs to be heard.
I wanted to confront him specifically in the court, and I was willing to put my name out there if that's what it was going to take.
While it has not been easy to find the strength to be where I am today, I am here as a survivor. I am no longer a victim.
Originally, there were only several who were going to speak, and then the Army grew one by one.
I originally wished to remain anonymous. However, I will no longer let you have control over me. I will not let you win.
I remember seeing his face, and I was just thinking, like, I don't want to be ashamed of what happened to me. I want to be able to share my story and be an advocate for others. And so I decided that I wanted to go public. And my last treatment was in August 2016. A week later, he was let go by MSU. I'm possibly the last child he will ever assault.
169 spoke.
You should have been locked up a long time ago.
How dare you ask any of us for forgiveness?
And they would turn to him. And they really took control, and you could see their pain leaving.
I remember walking away from the podium and just feeling like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders.
It was definitely something that was empowering to be able to have a voice, especially for some of us that had been silenced for so long.
All right.
This monster should never see the light of day, and he won't.
You don't get to violate human beings like that. So as long as he never gets out, he will have the sentence he deserves.
It makes me mad, and it makes me sad too that there were people who could have held him accountable for what he did, but because of his power that he had, he wasn't held accountable.
Nassar used the money, metals, and power to blind everyone for his own sexual pleasure. He was a god walking on glass and not feeling it because he was elevated by so many.
Evil takes all different shapes and sizes, and the kind of evil that he is portraying is that insidious form that can evade detection in society.
As abuses of power goes, this has to be one of the worst. He was a serial, prolific, nice guy, and those are the most dangerous.
Still to this day, I have a hard time reconciling who I spent decades believing he was to who I know cognitively he is now.
I've tried to come to peace with just not knowing all the answers, and that's okay.
I'm a better person now because of what I've overcome. And I do feel like I've taken the power back. You know, I know he's not going to the same place I am.
Big man. His whole life was practicing medicine. He was loved. He was looked up to.
Our pastor was like a celebrity, like a local celebrity.
She wanted to build a profession, helping to heal people naturally.
Somebody in that police department is not telling the truth.
After 3 dead bodies, they started seeing patterns.
Her desire for power and control drove her to extremes.
I deserve to live. They don't.
Power brought him sex, power brought him money. He would use any means necessary to keep that power.
Just what kind of doctor are you? It's just evil. Who can you trust?
I will do whatever has to be done to survive.
They saw a massive amount of blood.
Everybody was just in disbelief that this could even be possible.